Hello and welcome to another episode of Calm the Conflict, the Art of Resolution with myself, Zakia, a commercial litigation solicitor and debt recovery trainer with David.
Thanks so much. So I'm David Goldberg. I'm a disputes partner at EMW Law, and I'm also an accredited mediator through CEDA and Legal 500 recognised.
Thank you, David. In this episode, we are going to look at a specific area of mediation in terms of industry type, because David, you deal with so many different areas of dispute resolution.
Yep.
You mentioned boundary disputes, you mentioned the money claims, and one of the areas that you work on is shareholder disputes and partnership agreements / disputes. Tell me a little bit more about sort of resolving those at mediation.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. So shareholder disputes are quite common now. Maybe that's a sign of the times.
Because you've been in the mediation world for 25 years?
Well, I've been playing with mediation for 25 years, but I've probably only been a mediator for 6 or 7. But certainly, yes, I've done a number of and definitely there's more shareholder agreement and partnership disputes coming up. So I thought it might be useful to sort of focus on one of those or those
Absolutely.
2 areas. So with shareholder disputes, it's not as simple as just there being a money claim or a boundary dispute. It tends to be slightly more complicated in as much as there are often arguments about breaches of covenants, restrictive covenants of one form or other. So be that not approaching clients.
Yeah, I was going to say, break that down a little bit for us. Give us a specific example of, a covenant that's been breached by a party.
So I've got one at the moment where one of the parties has sold their business, and as part of that sale process, and the other party bought it, and as part of that process, there was a covenant not to compete, not to approach clients, not to approach third parties, and not to approach employees of the business that has been sold. And arguments have arisen in relation to that. So whether there have or haven't been covenants breached, whether the approach was solicited or not solicited, and this is an area which is quite complicated legally, as you'll be aware. So there's lots of case law on solicitation. It all sort of spins off the employment type of stuff and then moves into the commercial realm as well. So often when dealing with shareholder disputes, it's more complicated than just dealing with finances. We need to deal with personalities, because obviously it's now becoming personal, because you are saying that someone has done something wrong. You have breached your covenants. You have breached your whatever it is you agreed. There may also be a spin-off if, for example, we have a breach of procurement argument. So somebody has sold on to someone else, but because their new business has told them, you'll get away with it. So there may well be a claim.
No one ever follows up with it, or
no one would ever follow up on it.
Yeah.
No one will spot it. No, don't worry about it. They'll never do anything about it. So you've got an individual who has potentially breached let's say a restrictive covenant of some kind, not to approach certain individuals or certain businesses or clients. And it may well be that they have joined another business which is a competing business, and then there may well be a spin-off, of procurement of breach. So the legal proceedings arguably will be threefold. So we may have a 3-party mediation, because you've got the individual who has alleged to have breached, and then you've got the company who have allegedly procured that breach. And there may also be other interesting spins on that if you have legal expenses insurance, for example, on one of the parts. So the individual may have insurance if they were a director of their own business or not. So those are really interesting developments, but they are much more different to debts, because I'm dealing with personalities. Yeah. You're dealing with commercial arguments. You're dealing about whether or not there is or isn't a breach, how significant the breach is, was it covered under the warranty letter, all this kind of stuff.
So how do you drill down then and get to a resolution on a matter like that, and sort of what is the outcome at the end of the day?
The outcome may well be a variety of different things. Again, it's not a very good answer, but typical lawyer answer. So it may well be that there will be undertakings sought against the offender, and
not to repeat.
Yeah, not to repeat. Not for a certain period of time to do X, Y, and Z. Undertakings not to approach clients, undertakings not to do whatever it is, not to repeat whatever the breach is. That is often the remedy that is sought in the first instance on partnership or shareholder disputes. There may also be the spin-off argument of, well, actually, you have taken away these clients, and therefore there's a financial loss. So there's that part of the shareholder.
So the damages
there's
element.
a damages element to the claim. So you've got the first part is the personal thing, which may or may not be dealt with by undertakings, subject to whether they're worth giving undertakings on. The second part is there may be a financial claim in a shareholder agreement where there's a breach and there is a loss. So that's the second part of the claim. There may be a procurement of breach claim, which is a third part of the claim. That very much depends. These are all very fact sensitive. And what's interesting in those is it's a mix of personal and commercial, because you've got the person at the individual. You've breached your covenant. No, I haven't. There was a reason for it, or you knew I was doing it, or there's a reason for it, which is quite an interesting one. So shareholder disputes can be far more complicated because of that. Yeah. Likewise, while we're just on the topic, we were discussing sort of partnership disputes. Again, these spin off of archaic law, going back to the 1890 whatever it is Act, and there will also be contractual terms. Were the terms implemented? Were they not? You've got the Three Rivers type of arguments that may be thrown in there.
What is a typical partnership dispute where one party wants to walk away from a business but can't?
So I had yes. So by way of an example, I had a partnership dispute where it was in the dentistry industry. The business, the partners in the business decided to go separate ways, and then it's a case of how we're going to distribute clients, how we're going to distribute, what are we going to do about debt. Dentistry equipment is very expensive. If you need, you've got to set up a dentist with the specific chairs and the hygienists and everything else that go with them. And how many miles away can you be? And this was one where the two dentists were in very close proximity to each other.
And do they generally have good documentation in terms of proper partnership agreements that have been legally written, with proper legal advice behind them?
Sometimes there are partnership agreements, a bit like shareholder agreements and stuff like that. But often shareholder agreements tends to be more that there tends to be something. There is normally a shareholders agreement of some kind. Partnership agreements tend not to exist because a partnership is the coming together of two or more people.
Generally, they know each other or worked with each other in some form or in a guise or.
Absolutely, and you decide, let's give it a go. Well, we'll see how it goes, and it goes better than expected until it doesn't.
Until it doesn't, absolutely.
And then when it goes wrong, that's when it becomes a problem. And then you may have issues where, well, actually, you've been doing the lion's share of, or I've been doing the lion's share of the work, or you've been doing less than the lion's share of the work, or you're competing, or you can't do this, or, well, actually, you're not bringing in X amount of revenue, or you're not helping on the marketing, or whatever it is. So, and then you're falling back on partnership acts. Arguments, evidential arguments, perhaps forensic evidence on.
And that's why you say those become a little bit more complicated.
They are more complicated.
But are you able to resolve those in a day?
Yes. If there's a way, that they can be resolved. Often the day is helpful because partnership suits are complicated, and often the pleadings are quite lengthy, and the arguments are lengthy, and the law behind them is lengthy. Likewise with partnership suits, especially if there's no partnership agreement. But again, it's just down to actually, two warring parties. You've got to separate, and maybe one doesn't want to give an undertaking, maybe, but they'll do other things, and they won't, temper it down or water it down, because often, if a business is going after a former shareholder, director of their own business that they've bought, it's bad blood. It doesn't good well in the industry. If it's a niche sector, people hear about what's going on.
Absolutely. So, industries are incestuous.
Industries are incestuous, very small, and people know everybody. So sometimes it's better off not to air your dirty laundry in public, and then people do come to commercial resolutions in partnership and or shareholder disputes.
But overall, mediation works again really well for resolving partnership and shareholder disputes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's great. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, David.
Thanks very much.
Thank you to our listeners and our viewers. We will be bringing you more episodes of Calm the Conflict, the Art of Resolution. And I just want to say a huge, huge thank you to every single person that's downloaded downloaded our podcast so far. We are overwhelmed with the support.
Phenomenal.
So please carry on listening. Do share anything you want to ask us about mediation, whether that's partnership disputes, money claims, neighbourhood disputes. David is always on hand to answering questions, and we will bring you some more episodes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was brought to you by Right Here Creative, a video creative agency based in Oxfordshire. Check them out at rightherecreative.co.uk.